Okay, so sometimes you'll have more complicated linear equations. And by complicated, I'm just saying there are more terms. So maybe there are more terms where the variables are on both sides of the equal sign. They could be on one side of the equal sign. So the things in general, these are some steps that you can follow. You'll distribute if you need to, and you'll know you'll need to distribute because you'll see parentheses. So it'll be a number outside the parentheses usually. All right, so we don't have any number outside the parentheses, so no need to distribute. So now you look and see if you can combine like terms. So we have the variables both are on the same side. So before we try to move any variables, we want to combine those two. And you just use subtraction. So we're doing 12 minus 4. So 12s minus 4s gives you 8s. Copy the plus 2 and then copy the 10. And when you're solving these equations, you want to write it exactly as I'm writing it. This is not, I mean, there's a time to skip step, and in the previous video I mentioned that, and I'll show you where you can skip steps at, but you want to make sure you keep the structure together, so that line through the equal sign that you probably heard from your middle school teacher, a middle school teacher, the goal of that was to keep the work organized. You keep the work on the left side and the right side of the equal sign separate. So now we're trying to get rid of the 2. So you look at the sign, and we're going to always do the opposite. It's called the additive inverse. Opposite is sufficient. So you can either go ahead and mentally subtract 2 and then write this, or if you prefer, you can actually show the step. The teacher should be okay with you not showing this step. So the 2's cancel out, and then we have 8s equals 8. Now, for this one, we combine like terms, and there were only variables on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So there was no need to move any variables across from one side to the other because they were both on the same side. So LHS is left-hand side, RHS right-hand side. So now we're going to isolate the variable by getting rid of this number 8. We want to change that to a 1. So since 8 anytime you see a number next to a variable, it just means multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication will be division. And you can either mentally divide both sides by 8 and get the answer, or if you prefer, you can show the work. So divide by 8, s equals 1. Okay, so level 2. Now, you should take note of the fact that the variables are all on one side of the equal sign. So you want to understand that knowing where terms are at in relationship to the equal sign is important. So when they're all on one side, that's going to make it a little easier. I'll copy it below so I have more space to solve. All right, so you put your line through the equal sign. Again, keep putting the line through the equal sign until it's crystal clear. Sometimes when students don't do that, they lose track of which side is the left-hand side and which side is the right because of the number of terms that are present. So there's no need to distribute. Recall, you'll see parentheses. That'll be a visual sign that you're going to have to distribute. But no parentheses, I don't have to worry about distributing. So now I'm going to combine these like terms. So I know they're alike because they both have a variable n, and they have a invisible exponent that we usually never write. All right, so then you combine them. That gives you 10n minus 17 equals 13. And then, as I mentioned before, you can do mental math here. If you want to do mental math, you will recognize that you're adding 17 to both sides. So you would just write 10n equals, and then you do the mental math of 17 plus 13 to get 30. And then you can also do mental math for the next step. So we're trying to isolate n. Every time you see a number next to a letter, it's going to mean multiplication. So the opposite of multiplying by 10 is to divide by 10, and then we get n equals 3. Now here are the steps that I'm not showing that may help some people. And if you need to write the steps out, please write the steps out. So don't try to do what somebody else does. Do what works for you to help you to get consistent results, consistent successful results. All right, and then here's the other step I didn't show. So divide by 10. And then this is how you would solve an equation that requires more than 2 steps. a linear equation.